This is the We Get Outdoors podcast. My name is Rob Yates. I am your host and welcome to this episode. Today I am delighted to share with you an interview with whitewater kayaking legend, explorer and conqueror of rivers that most people walk away from, Darren Clarkson-King. In this episode, Darren and I discuss how to make the right decisions to have the safest and most incredible adventures, how someone has recently navigated the gates of hell filled with water, where the best places are in Nepal for travellers and backpackers, what Darren's fastest solo first descents are, and why he's one of the world's most credible whitewater kayakers who just calls himself a bum with a business. So if you want to know what Darren's wife describes as a homeless old woman, what the key trends are impacting Nepal today, and how Dane Jackson has just done something Darren thought was insane, if you want to find out what it's like to kayak all the rivers off Everest and K2 completely solo, then this is your episode to get into the head of Darren Clarkson-King, a crazy, talented, entertaining, globally credible whitewater kayaker. Let's jump into it. This episode is brought to you by the We Get Outdoors tribe, where your next adventure is just one click away. You can join this, the fastest growing outdoor group on planet Earth, and become part of a tribe of like-minded outdoor enthusiasts, sharing your adventures, their adventures, trips and insights, and helping to ensure you plan and have the most perfect adventures. Click on the link in the description below to join for free right now. As you and I have been trying to line up this podcast for quite a few weeks now, and you're in a part of the world where internet and Wi-Fi isn't always consistent, and I'm in a part of the world where internet and Wi-Fi isn't always consistent. But here we are, Saturday morning, we've made it work. Can I share a little story, Daz, before we jump into it? Would that be all right?
Yeah, please do.
So you probably don't know this, but I first heard of you in 1999. In August 1999, I picked up a piranha in a zone, quit my job, got on a plane to the Himalayas, and landed in Kathmandu not knowing anybody. And I wandered around Kathmandu trying to work out how to go boating. And somebody said, "Oh, you want to go to Pokhara?" I'm like, cool. So I jumped on a bus to Pokhara with my piranha in a zone, which was radically short for the Himalayas at that point in time. And I got off the bus and I went to the first rafting company I found. And I bumped into this guy called Dave. You know who I'm talking about, right?
I know exactly who you're talking about.
So I bumped into this, and he had a piranha in a zone as well.
Yeah.
He's like, "Sweet, Rob, yeah, we can go boating tomorrow. No worries. The company's going. We're just going to follow the rafts around." And off we went. And we got to the first rapid on the river. And I said, "Hey, Dave, what's the line down this rapid?" And he said to me, "Wherever I go, don't you follow." And I'm like, "Oh, that's bloody useful." And as I got to know Dave more, Dave kept saying, "You have to meet my mate Daz. You have to meet my mate Daz." And I'm like, at one point in time, I said to him, "Can you shut up about this Daz guy? Because I just need to meet him now." And that's how I first came across you. I think you were in the Himalayas at that point in time, exploring. I don't know, what were you doing in 99 in the Himalayas?
Oh, we were just generally paddling around the Himalayas. I'd done what you'd done, really. I was only young. I basically decided that I wanted a gap year. So that gap year turned into 20 odd years of Himalayan exploring in Alaska and exploring in India and Norway and various other countries. And that sort of leads me to Nepal now, where, as I'm talking to you now, people might hear the sound drop out and me going, "Can you still hear me?" Because Wi-Fi is shockingly bad still in Nepal. But yeah, that's what I was doing 20 years ago in Nepal, was exploring rivers, and I'm still doing it now. So that really explains where the appallingness of internet between where I am in the world and you are in the world.
Yes. Sorry, everybody. So those who are listening to the podcast, we are still recording. Darren, where are you at this point in time?
I'm in Pokhara Lakeside. which is in Nepal, Himalayas, on a cloudy day. Can't see fishtail, can't even see the end of my street.
Blimey. And for everybody who doesn't know, I'm in South Africa. So, internet. So, Daz, can we just fire back to what were you doing in the Himalayas in 1999?
Well, I was generally, 1999, I was in Norway. 2000 was my first proper Nepal season, but me and Dave knew each other anyway. So that's why, we were referencing that. So what was it? I was basically a general bum. I finished university, had a proper job, or a career trajectory, I think that's what they call it. And I decided I needed a gap year, and that was 20 years ago, wasn't it? Just over. So I'm still wearing the same T-shirt, metaphorically speaking, that I was when I was in my 20s, and I'm still doing pretty much the same thing, except now I run kayak tours, motorbike tours, and guiding trips. I'm no longer a bum.
You're a bum with a business.
Yeah, I'm a bum with a business now. I pretty much spent 20 years of my life in the back streets of Kathmandu, back streets of Pokhara, and running the rivers of the Himalayas, which has been, a pretty wild ride for 20 years.
That's incredible. What is it that keeps drawing you back to the Himalayas? Because you're obviously originally from the UK. You could boat and live anywhere in the world. Why the Himalayas?
Right. When I first came out, which is really easy to answer. So when I first came out, it was going to be a gap year. I'm going to take a few months off life and explore. But the Himalayas I just found were the perfect playground for rafting and kayaking. Amazing people, amazing culture. And when I was younger, it was vastly affordable, and it meant you could escape the world a little bit. You live relatively cheap. We slept on beaches, ride on the roofs of buses. You'd have 10 guys in one room, and that just kept me going and pushing myself on harder and harder rivers. The rivers in the, as far as I'm concerned, are some of the best rivers in the world. All you've got to do is, you look at Pakistan, and people hear about Pakistan and all the turmoil, the political turmoil there. But the rivers are just exquisite in Pakistan. The rivers in Bhutan are just off the scale of cleanliness. The river that runs through the capital city of Bhutan, that runs through Thimphu, I can drink out of without a filter.
Wow, there's not many places in the world you can say that of still today.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. So many good friends in the Himalayas. This is my home. I tell people I'm proudly expat. Me and my wife, Andrea, we are quite nomadic because we go season to season across the Himalayas. We have a house in Wales still, so we do go back to Wales in the winter. But we're proudly expat and move around the Himalayas. Now, you've just spoken to me about a guy called Dave that you met back in the day. Now, me and my wife were having a meal in a restaurant last night, a restaurant called Moon Dance, which you may recognise.
Is that still going?
Moon Dance has changed a lot. It's a very nice. Yeah. So we were in Moon Dance. I've just finished our trek, and the owner of Moon Dance, a guy called Dorje, came up to us with a bottle of Kakuri rum for me to fly back to Britain. Yeah, for a full bottle of Kakuri rum for me to fly back to Britain to give to the guy Dave you've just spoken about, because he's not seen Dave for a few years. So it's like a little family. So we've got a bottle of Kakuri rum on my bedside table at the moment. I don't even drink, and I've got to fly that back for Dave.
That's quality. And does Dave still go by? I haven't seen Dave for 3 or 4 years. Is he still going by Crazy Dave on occasions, or is he just Dave these days?
Yeah, no, Crazy Dave, still going by Crazy Dave. A few years ago, he tried to get rid of the crazy, but the crazy still haunts him. For those that don't know Dave, he's a chap in his 40s who is an exceptionally good whitewater kayaker, exceptionally good paraglide pilot, and an exceptionally good climber. One of his beliefs in kayaking is that you only get one chance to run a rapid blind. So for those that don't kayak, that means you only get one chance to run a rapid without seeing it first or knowing which way to go or the route down the rapid for safety. And Dave's a firm believer in that you get one chance to run it blind. He's also a firm believer in that gravity will always win.
He's true. That's very true.
Now, Dave was my best man when I got married. He's an exceptionally good friend of mine. But yeah, he still goes by the Crazy Dave moniker, and he's known around the Himalayas as Crazy Dave.
Yeah, I've probably got a whole, just from spending 4 months with him, September through to Christmas in the Himalayas in '99. I've probably got a year's worth of Dave stories, actually, and I'd imagine you've got a lifetime's worth of Dave stories.
I mean, Dave stories. I'm trying to put a picture for people that are listening to this about Dave. So last year I was working on a TV project in Bhutan, and I really wanted Dave to be my safety cover. And when I showed the TV company a photograph of Dave to say, look, this is a guy I want to be my safety. Obviously on screen, so this is what he looks like. Their reply was, he's not camera ready. which for those that obviously don't know Dave, he's quite a short guy. He's got tattoos and a goatee beard and stuff, and he's not your sort of typical outdoor influencer Instagram star. He doesn't have Instagram as far as I'm aware, and he posts on Facebook, not that often. He's very typical of the guy that you would see hunched over the corner of the bar at 1 o'clock in the morning, which is, I'm sure you'd agree with. But like I say, an exceptional kayaker, exceptional outdoor.
He's an exceptionally confusing human being, I think, because he's one of the nicest people I know. But he's also the bloke you want to disown at 2 o'clock in the morning when he's decided that tonight's the night he's going to have a party, and you're like, oh, jeepers, here we go again. And then the following day, you're like, you're the nicest guy I know again.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he's the guy that when you say let's meet at 9 o'clock in the morning to go kayaking, he's the guy that turns up at 11 because he didn't get out of bed. But then he's the guy that saves your ass when you're running class 5. He's like I say, an amazing guy, and I hope you're listening to this, Dave. And when this does go online, I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah, but likewise, we both confess to him. So, my friend, you are, and I don't know, you are like, I call you the guy I know who's one of the most globally credible whitewater kayakers I've ever had the privilege of talking to or paddling with. And yet, most people don't really know who Daz Clarkson is. And I guess you were doing what you were doing and becoming the paddler who I know you to be in the days before Instagram. But for those who don't know you, what's been the highlights of your 20 years of weird, wonderful, and crazy shit that you've got up to?
Okay, 20 years into what? A couple of minutes of ranting on a podcast? Right. Yeah. Dead quickly. There is a section of rivers in British Columbia and Alaska made famous by a guy called Walt Blackadder. It's called the North American Triple Crown, which is the Alsek, Susitna and Stikine. These are iconic rivers of the North Country. For people that are into kayaking, they are like the pinnacle, or in the sort of 2000s, they're the pinnacle of North American kayaking, and probably still up there as, like Grand Prix level rivers. Managed to tick those off with Dave, as it happens. I have paddled extensively in the Himalayas. Notably, I'm the only person to paddle from Everest and K2, which is something that you tell people about and they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. But you have to realise that when we did the Baldu in Pakistan, which comes from K2, that was just after 9/11 and the terrorist attacks there. So the political landscape of Pakistan was a little bit stressful at the time. Numerous first descents in India and Bhutan, first descent last year, first descents in Nepal, paddled in Thailand, paddled in Kenya, paddled in Norway, I think, first descents in Britain, and solo speed descent, which is my latest thing I'm super proud of, because at 44, people tend to think you're getting old and past it. So there's a river in North India called the Zarap Chew. So Zarap Chew becomes the Zanskar, flows into the Zanskar, then flows into the Indus, 240 kilometres. you would normally take 5 to 6 days to do it, something like that. Some people do it in 4 days. Me and my friend George did it in 1 day.
Oh,
one day, yeah, 1 day of class 4-5, Box Canyon, committing Himalayan whitewater, remote Himalayan whitewater, high putting over 4,000 meters. We did it in 20 hours and 50 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, which is, like I say, 44 now, so I was 42 at the time. And that's one of my new things. I've been back in recently and soloed the Zarap a couple of times. I've done back-to-back solo trips on it, which is no one else. I mean, people have been in there solo before, but I don't know anybody that's done it in this time I've done it in, which is nothing to boast about. As you get older, we all know that if you're to do something quickly is not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, that can be like driving a Ferrari on ice on occasions.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that, and I'm really proud of the stuff we get up to in Bhutan. Like I say, that's really good. And then for the fact that we're training new generations of guides, first aid skills and customer service skills, ethnicity and diversity training and that sort of stuff.
That's super awesome. I want to come back to a bunch of this, but I want to come back to one particular thing. So this morning I woke up and there was a video on my Instagram feed of Dane Jackson paddling a rapid on the Indus. Now,
on the Randu Gorge, the last rapid on the...
Yeah, that's the one. You've been there. You've been there.
I have.
You've seen that rapid. I'm going to suspect that you went, that's nice. Somebody will do it one day, but I'm just going to put my boat back on the roof and carry on driving. Talk to me about that rapid and that achievement from Dane.
For those that don't know and those that don't follow kayaking, this rapid we're talking about is colossal. Imagine the gates of hell filled with water. This is what it would look like. This is a thundering monstrosity of chaos that makes Niagara Falls look like the pond in your backyard. Okay, so it is an amazing piece of water just off the Karakoram Highway. It is on the Indus as it comes out of Skardu in Pakistan. It's a place called the Randu Gorge, and it is insane to look at. I've paddled the Indus in India, paddled sections of it in Pakistan. The rapid that Dane Jackson just ran, I believe, is probably the largest section of water ever run in the world. And I'm putting that there on the Inga. I think the Inga's not even in the same ballpark, and the Inga was huge just because of the gradient drop on this piece. When I was there back in 2004, I think it was, we looked at that rapid and we said, there is a line on this, possibly, maybe, hopefully, and in the future somebody may possibly run it. But to see Dane Jackson run it and run it as smoothly as he does is just awe-inspiring.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's absolutely insane.
It's incredible. It's that at one point in time in my paddling, I used to think I was quite brave, and I probably was never as brave as you or a whole bunch of other paddlers. And I feel just insignificant when I see people like Dane paddle water like that. Yeah,
I mean, I've just been discussing this actually with Andrea this morning over breakfast. It's an amazing achievement to do that rapid. It's up there with the first ascent of Everest or the first ascent of K2. It's up there. What people have to understand is the years of training and Dane's ability and skill to run that rapid. It's not something that somebody could learn to kayak in 6 months and then paddle off the end of. It's really up there as an awe-inspiring achievement.
And the risk as well. I want to talk to you about that because the Himalayas is amazing whitewater. Amazing whitewater, I think, from everything from beginners through to what we just spoke about with Dane Jackson, like the most advanced stuff in the world. But equally, the exposure to risk out there is is greater because you're not in a first world country where you can often walk to a road in 5 minutes or pick up your mobile phone and call mountain rescue. How do you go about managing that? So awesome white water, but if you screw it up, like the likelihood of help is minimal.
Yeah, I mean, the go back to the Rapid Dangerous Run, that is roadside. And it's not like you can walk out of your Jeep and like see the fall, but there is road access-ish to it, like it's relatively close. But to get to medical help and the rescues that you could put in place on there are marginal. Now, Himalayas, what you need when you are in the Himalayas for any adventure sport, not just kayaking, any adventure sport at all, whether it be trekking or paragliding or climbing, mountain biking, is an ability to either be experienced and trained in remote first aid yourself or have a guide that's experienced and trained in remote first aid. That is key. It's not a case of having a small first aid kit in your pocket that's got a band-aid in it and a little bit of ibuprofen tablet. That's never going to cut it out here. I think you need to be aware of the risks you take on. Similarly, just road travel in the Himalayas can be lethal. The accidents that happen on the highways of the Himalayas are, last year, 2 years ago, I think 200 people died in a bus crash.
Sure.
No, that was 200 people on one bus.
On one bus?
Yeah. And the bus came off the cliff. Now, if you can imagine, that's like way more people than that bus could probably take safely. I think there was a bus and a Jeep involved, but that's a lot of death. As the newspaper articles out here often say, a Jeep crashed into the river, 4 people were unsuccessful. And that's just the way the newspapers word it. Now, vehicles do come off the highway a lot. Riding on the roofs of buses has now been stopped for the most part, so you don't see people on the roofs of buses anymore, which is good. Vehicle safety is much higher. Vehicles we use seat-belted vehicles and sensible trained drivers, but there's still people that, and we don't drive at night, which is sensible because, nobody wants to drive from the Indian border for 36 hours with metal on metal brakes and a driver that's probably off his face on Red Bull.
I've done a trip like that with Dave, actually. Both of us sat on the roof of a bus. In fact, I've done a couple of trips like that.
I was far too many sitting on the buses, tying yourself down so you don't fall off.
Well, that's it. And then get ready to pull that knot so you can jump clear if the bus goes off the cliff, right?
Exactly. And in 20 years, I've only ever jumped off the bus twice, which I think is quite good.
Yeah. And that's probably more often than most people do in their paddling career.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've jumped twice, and I've also jumped once off the back of a flatbed truck, but that's all right. But as I get older, I tend to use more sensible vehicles, and you realise that you could pay a bit more money and have somebody that's not going to drive the truck into the back of a river.
Yeah, that's incredible. How do you go about mentally managing your own safety as you do all the stuff that you do? Keeping your head in the right place, because we both know if you get distracted by the lack of helicopter rescue, for instance, or anything else like that, distracted by anything, obviously your performance level goes down. How do you keep your mind clear to go and do what you do?
Yeah. Right. I have this discussion a lot with people, and the way you've worded it is actually really good. Now, to me, paddling a river, and for those listeners that don't understand rivers, they're sort of graded from flat to class 6, which is death. So class 0 is flat and class 6 is death. So to me, if you're making a move on class 3, which is like the middle of the scale, if I'm making that move in Wales or I'm making that move in the US on a roadside run, that move is the same when I move it to the Himalayas, even though there's no road. The move itself is the same. So if I can paddle class 3 on my home run, I can paddle class 3 remotely. Even though because the risk is the same, my skill base is the same. Similarly, if I paddle class 5 in the UK on a roadside run, I can paddle class 5 remotely because it's the same move or the same mental game or whatever we want to put, in there as the wording. Now, how do I then deal with there's no the helicopter need for helicopter rescue, or the fact I might have to walk out with a broken leg, or all those things. I don't really think about those things, because I don't think about those things when I'm training on my local river back in Britain. So why do I need to think about those things when I go to a remote gorge? Because if it doesn't affect me when I'm training on that same grade of water, why will it affect me when I'm on the same grade of water in an isolated position? Obviously, I have a risk assessment internally, and as I've got a business, I have a risk assessment externally to deal with those situations. But personally, I don't think about it, because if it didn't affect me then, why does it affect me now? Which brings us to, I think it's Emile Coué, French linguist, symbolist, psychoanalyst type guy. He basically said that if you get a plank of wood and you lay it on the floor and you walk from one end of the plank to the other end of the plank, on that, across the plank, left foot, right foot, across the plank, you don't feel any fear about falling off it. You just walk across. Now, he also says, why then, when you lift that plank off the floor and spread it between two buildings, do you fear walking across the plank? Because it's the same plank, and your feet is the same, your feet are the same, the steps you take will be the same. So why do you fear falling off? Because you didn't fall off when it was on the floor. So I sort of use the similar sort of technique. Is I didn't fail then. Why would I fail now? I'm doing the same thing. Obviously, that is open to a certain level of abuse and misunderstanding, and does open up a certain amount of risk.
I have a little philosophy. So I obviously live in Africa now, coming from the UK, just like you. And some of the paddling that I do these days, be it as far north as the White Nile or Zambezi, or down into South Africa itself, I often experience the similar sorts of environments to where you are in the Himalayas. Third world country, very remote.
Yeah.
There's not stuff. And I think that people in the first world countries lull themselves into a false sense of security attached to a mobile phone and attached to the possibility of rescue. Because, like, if rescue's an hour away or a day away, it really doesn't make much difference. Like, if you need rescue badly enough, an hour is too long. And in most first world country, an hour is quite short to get a team of qualified people to do something. So what has anything really changed? I know the media's changed, but I don't think that the usefulness of rescue has changed. Maybe.
I don't know of any situations in the Himalayas recently, in a river environment, where a helicopter is needed to be called. I know a lot of situations where people have used their mobile phones when they have service. I'm a big advocate of getting a spot find me type device on InReach device. Anyway, no matter where you are in the world, get one of those type of receivers. Anyway, I know people that have called for assistance using their mobile phones to situations that they should have dealt with in-house, as it were. They should have dealt with at the scene, but they've phoned and they've waited for someone to come and help them because they didn't know how to deal with that situation. And I think that's changed. 20 years ago, where we didn't have mobile phones, you just had the knowledge, or at least hoped you had the knowledge to deal with the situation. Now people have a mobile phone, and they either call or they Google how to deal with the situation they're in. And I've seen that happen as well.
YouTube, how to relocate a dislocated shoulder.
Yeah, I actually know somebody in South India that dislocated the shoulder on a trip, and they were driving into hospital, and the pain was so much for him in the back of the car that he Googled himself how to relocate his shoulder, got his friend to stop the vehicle, they put the shoulder back in, and he just went home. And I was like, yeah, I'm not happy with that. But the modern world, the world of social media, the world of YouTube, the world of people relying on devices. I use my device constantly. I do. But I'd hope I'd have the knowledge to deal with it without my device being there.
So it's important to understand, like places like the Himalayas is very accessible for somebody who wants to go and organize themselves a trip to the Himalayas and just go freestyle it, like I suppose you and I did 20 years ago. But equally, you have to understand that what knowledge and ability do I actually need to go and do this? Like, what self-sufficiency do I need to do this? And do I really have it to take myself there?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'll be honest, and I'm sure you'd agree with me here, Rob. When you first came out, when I first came out, we spent a lot of time, and I think the technical term is winging it.
Yeah.
We spent time eating in that restaurant that served bad food, and you got stomach rot for a couple of days. We went to those restaurants and we learned, bad experience. We got on those bad buses. We did all that stuff, and we sort of winged our around. Whereas that's brilliant if you've got 3 months to sort of travel around the Himalayas or wherever you are in the world, and you can make those mistakes and deal with it. But if you've only got 2 weeks, you really need to be on the ball when it comes to, okay, which hotel am I going to now? Which restaurant am I going to? Because if you go to a bad restaurant on a Friday night for your meal, and you're going out Saturday morning on a rafting trip or a trekking trip, and you get food poisoning, that's your holiday ruined. Now, this brings in another part of social media. So you have TripAdvisor and Kings.com and all these other sites that make travel easier and nicer and much quicker to book things. But also, there's a lot of things on these sites that are just lies. We all know fake reviews. We all know stuff like that. So people have to be going to the Himalayas and wherever you're going in the world with an open mind. And I think it's sensible people know that, and people that are not so sensible don't know that. And it's the people that are not so sensible that maybe you need to know that sort of stuff.
I remember two things. One was going back to the UK in 1999 and going and booking myself on a bunch of courses to go and fill in some gaps of things that I really didn't know. Like I went and did a 2-week-long first aid course because I'd only had like a 48-hour-long first aid course beforehand. And you quickly identify that you really don't know enough. The other thing is that you could go to the Himalayas with your 2 weeks leave or vacation time. And if you're a paddler, you might get 5 days boating in if you're trying to freestyle it and work it out for yourself. You might do if you're lucky. And so it's about making that decision. Am I happy to freestyle it and take 14 days and just paddle for 4 or 5 days? Or do I want to go and actually I'll just use Daz to go and take me down some rivers and he can guarantee me 8 or 9 days boating? And you've got to make that decision before you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing. I mean, it's a way off between people that are time poor and money rich, or time rich, money poor. And I'm not using the word rich and poor here as like a class divide. I mean, there's some British paddlers at the moment that are in Lakeside, and they're so much holding back their budget that they're sleeping on the grass at the side of the lake.
Wow.
Because they'd rather not spend, for a dirtbag hostel, you're going to be spending like $3 a night for a bed. And these guys would rather save that $3 and have a big breakfast than sleep in the hostel. Now, Lakeside is quite developed and the lake is not super quiet, but these guys would rather have an uncomfortable night's sleep on the side of the lake and have a bigger breakfast and put that $3 to good food than they would to a bed. I'd rather have a bed, but then I'm in my 40s.
Likewise, fella, likewise. Tell everybody about Lakeside Pokhara. I mean, I could rant and rave about that place for ages, but if somebody was to come to Pokhara and come and hang out in Lakeside for a while, what would they experience?
So Lakeside Pokhara is like the second city of Nepal, really. Kathmandu is like the first city. I think Pokhara is like, let's call it the second city. It is quite a big metropolitan area. Lakeside is for a lake, big lake, surrounded by Annapurna Range, really, the Himalayas, white snow-capped peaks, fishtail. The Peace Pagoda sits on the hill, but Lakeside is the tourist hub. So it's where backpackers, it's where travellers, it's where people of all incomes and all expectations come. You've got hotels that are $200 a night, you've got beds for $3 a night. it is the adventure capital of Nepal, to use the marketing that the Nepalese Tourism Board use. You can paraglide here, you can kayak here, you can trek, you can take a little leisurely boat tour across the lake, you can see sacred Hindu sites, you can see sacred Buddhist sites, you can sit in 1,000 coffee shops, have some of the best coffee in the world, which I actually just started drinking again this morning. I've been no coffee for 6 years, but I decided this morning to have a coffee. Some of the best coffee in the world, some of the best international cuisine on Lakeside. There are quiet spots to relax, quiet gardens. There are also, late night bars. It's, it's a travellers, backpackers, holidaymakers hangout. Easily spend a good couple of days in Lakeside Pokhara without getting bored. Is what I'm getting at. And then obviously it's the starting point for a lot of treks. It's Mardi Himal trek, the Panchasa trek, Annapurna treks. They all sort of base out of Pokhara. They don't necessarily start in Pokhara, but they do base out of Pokhara. There's really good rafting and kayaking comes out of Pokhara. You've got the Upper Seti, which is a local run, 45 minutes from town. You've got the Kaligandaki really close. There's a river called the Trisuli, which flows down the highway between Kathmandu and Pokhara. So you could even raft and kayak that between Kathmandu and Pokhara. In the next few years, there's going to be an international airport in Pokhara. So you'll be able to fly direct to Pokhara and miss Kathmandu altogether.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's huge. And if you want to go and do something adventurous, flying into Pokhara as opposed to Kathmandu would probably save you 2 days on your trip.
Yeah, definitely. If you had a short trip and you wanted to go trekking, say you wanted a good you've got 2 weeks, you want a good multi-activity, adventurous time. You want to do a bit of trekking, you want to do a bit of maybe a bit of paragliding, a bit of rafting. You're going to get all that by flying into Pokhara and having a relatively relaxed introduction to the Himalayas. When you land in Kathmandu, it can be a little bit crazy clearing immigration. It can take up to 3 hours to get through immigration. And then you've got the chaos of Kathmandu, which is just madness. Kathmandu is just madness. As my wife Andrea says, Kathmandu is a little bit like a homeless old woman. Right? Kathmandu, like I say, Kathmandu is a little bit like a homeless old woman. It's scruffy, it smells of piss, but people love her. And that's what Kathmandu is like.
That's such a great analogy. I got to steal that.
So you're welcome to.
Thanks. So around the world at this point in time, we're experiencing more and more dams cropping up. Now, when I was first in Nepal, the Kaligandaki trip was a 5-day trip. And then when I went back the following season, it was a 3-day trip. A dam had been built. I don't go to the White Nile in Uganda very much these days because of the 2 new dams that have taken away a huge proportion of the white water that I used to love. How is that a trend across the Himalayas, and how is it impacting you and what you do?
Okay, so it's funny. I was talking about the hydros in Nepal this morning. So the hydros, there are a growing number of hydro projects in Nepal. So for hydros to work, steep rivers offer obviously prime locations for hydro. Now, we can argue all day about the effectiveness of a hydro, especially because the silt up and the new one has to get built after a couple of years. How does it affect us? On one hand, it's made the rivers much shorter. So the Kaligandaki, for example, used to be 5 days, is now 3 days. Okay, which for people like yourself that's knew it as a 5-day, you'd come to the Kali and you'd be maybe a little disappointed that it's no longer 5 days. What on the plus side, it's made a 3-day trip safer. Going back into talking about risk and safety and stuff, because obviously to build a hydro, a road needs to go in. If a road goes in, it means you've got an access and egress points. So on the flip side, it's actually made it safer. It's made shorter trips are now cheaper because obviously a 3-day trip and a 5-day trip makes it's cheaper to do a 3-day trip. So if you don't have a lot of time, a 3-day trip like the Kaligandaki gives you a really good taste of rafting or kayaking for 3 days 2 nights sleeping under the stars, and then you could fill the rest of your time with another, sport, activity, whatever you want to call it. So that's really, there is a positive to it, but there's a massive negative to it. One of the negatives, there's going to be a hydro on the Sunkosi soon, and it's going to be a huge lake that'll back up. Same on the Trisuli, that's going to happen. And what's going to happen there is we need to be aware of is it's not about the loss of rivers for rafters and kayakers or the loss of rivers for tourism. It's the loss of the culture, the loss of the ecology there. And people have to move. People that live on the side of these rivers have to relocate because the rivers are going to, the rivers back up, and for generations they've used that river to fish. They've used that river for their water supply, for their food, and their culture is based around that river. And that river is going to disappear. It's either going to become dry, if it's a diversion system, or it's going to get flooded. People need to sort of understand that. I'm not saying that hydro is 100% bad. There's small-scale hydros. There's one on the Upper Belleffe. Brilliant small-scale hydro that powers the village on the Upper Belleffe. Great, awesome system. But then the need for power in Nepal that is sold off to India and China as a revenue stream for Nepal is just insane. The rivers do get hydroed.
And it changes. I mean, culturally, all those people get displaced as often the water backs up from the dam. But it not just changes that, like if the water becomes stagnant, therefore its use for drinking and food and whatever else becomes dubious. Illnesses change and all sorts of weird stuff changes. Yeah.
And, obviously the quality of the water then that's used to irrigate the fields is different. Because the nutrients that come out of a lake are not necessarily the same as a free-flowing river and the nutrients that would be there. But then, as the world consumes, we need to find solutions to our power need.
Yeah, or our power greed, as somebody called it the other day.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, you mentioned the Sunkosi, and I know that you've paddled the Dudkosi coming out of Everest's base camp. Is it something like that?
Yeah, it comes off Everest. Yeah,
comes off Everest. But you've also paddled all the rivers off Everest. As a project, like a one-hit wonder to go scare yourself on your own or something.
Yeah.
What does our audience need to know about you paddling all those rivers off Everest?
Right. So what we need to know with rivers on Everest, they're quite hard. We need to know that they're high altitude, which is pretty obvious. And it started off as not really as a project. There's 3 rivers off Everest. One is the Dudkosi, which is a famous or infamous river, sometimes called a rock-infested ditch, which flows off Everest down on the Nepal side. And then you've got the Aran Gorges, which flow off the back of Everest into Nepal. And in Tibet, you've got a river called the Rongbuk Chu. The Rongbuk Chu falls off base camp in the Tibet side, and as it sort of arcs its way around the Himalayas and drops off the Tibetan plateau into Nepal, it becomes the Aran. So it's technically the same river as the Aran. Now, I did the Aran back in 2003, something like that. 2002 did the Aran, which was, I wanted to do paddling something hard in Nepal, so I went into the Aran with some friends. Went back to Nepal the following year, did the Dudkosi, so that's both the Aran and the Dud ticked off, and that's as groups. And then years later, a group of friends of mine and myself went into the Rongbuk Chu, and so we did all 3. I'm the only one of the groups, because there was a change of peers, that did all 3. And then I went back in to the Dudkosi and the Aran by myself to do it as pure as possible, without any porter support, without any food drops, without anything. So I took my boat into the Dudkosi, paddled down the Dudkosi, which joins the Sunkosi, went down the Sunkosi, then got myself back up the Aran, which also flows into the Sunkosi, and down the Aran. Both Dudkosi and the Aran are class 5. They're remote. Himalayan rivers that require intense concentration and intense commitment. Once you're in these rivers, there's no climbing out. You have to paddle them until they're finished. Now, the Dud Cozy has, in the middle of it, has a 3-day portage.
Yeah.
Which is so for those that are listening that are not rafters or kayakers, a portage is basically where you put your boat on your sorry ass shoulder and walk around a section of rapids that's impossible. So there's a 3-day portage in the Dud. And now the Arun, when I originally did the Arun Gorges, it was a 6-day walk to the put-in and a 6-day paddle out of a deep gorge. When I went back in and did it by myself, there was now a road, like a jeep road that went to the put-in. So I managed to get a jeep all the way and then walked for the last half a day to the put-in. The Arun took me 2 sleeps. So I was out on the third morning, so 2.5 days of what took me 6 days years before. And the Dud Cozy I also did in half the time. And that's because I was paddling by myself. I didn't need to stop on a beach at 4 o'clock and talk to, relax and talk about the day with peers, which is, one of the amazing things about paddling with friends is that you can sit and talk about the day. But I didn't need to do any of that because I'm by myself. So I'd paddle till it got dark and then climb out and sleep and get up at first light and paddle. So I was pulling 13-hour days.
So 13-hour days of paddling, relatively continuous, class 4-5.
Yeah. And I'd made a rookie error. When I paddle solo, and I do paddle solo a lot, I will happily discuss with anybody the risk versus reward of a solo paddle. I'll happily discuss it. I don't think this podcast is the time, but if anybody wants to find me on Facebook, I'll talk to them about it. Right. The 13-hour days, because I don't really care about food, as in I need to eat, but I don't really care if it's nice or not. I just want food in my belly. So when it came to the trip, I didn't have a stove on me and I didn't have a pan. So my breakfast every day was porridge oats, oatmeal, I think is the Americans call it, in a water bottle with coffee powder that I would shake up and just drink cold. And that was breakfast. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? And that was breakfast. And then evening meal, I had foil packed food that I would just eat out of the packet. So I wouldn't really warm it up. I maybe warm it up against a small fire, but I wouldn't really cook it. And I just eat that, as it were, straight away. I didn't filter any water. I just drank it straight out of the river.
Cool. So maybe if it's all right, at some point in time, we could do a separate podcast around solo adventuring. I've been doing quite a lot of solo mountaineering recently. I climbed South Africa's highest peak the other week, and I think it's a fascinating experience to go do solo adventures. But I also think it's a fascinating topic to unpack.
Yeah, I think it needs a lot of discussion for sure.
It's a fascinating state of mind. That's what I find. It's a fascinating place to be inside of yourself.
I've done an excessive amount of soloing, lots of which people know about, but there's a whole catalogue of stuff that people don't know about. And as a friend of mine once said, if somebody knows you've soloed it, then you've stopped soloing it.
It's like Fight Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Fight Club. Yeah, we can't talk about it.
Yeah.
So one of the things I'm particularly fascinated about, I'll move us on into the Himalayan region as a total. You've explored, adventured, and guided now across places that most of the world think you should avoid because of conflict. And I'm thinking about, Tibet is in conflict with China. Obviously, Pakistan and Afghanistan aren't on people's top of their destination lists, maybe at this point in time. How do you go about managing doing those things safely? And secondly, why should people go and put somewhere like Pakistan onto their I don't know, bucket list of places to go and adventure?
Okay, now I think we need to look at this in a few parts, and I'll probably only cover, one or two parts. So what we have to understand, I think, places like Pakistan and Afghanistan and Nepal 20 years ago, which was in the middle of a guerrilla civil war,
It was.
It was like 99.9% of the time, as a tourist, you're never in danger.
Mm.
Okay, now there is a small percentage where, you are going to be in danger, but you're going to be in danger if you walk through Toxteth in Liverpool at 2 o'clock in the morning with your iPhone, your new iPhone out and a wallet full of cash. For those that don't, if you're walking through a rough part of any neighbourhood, the chances of somebody asking for your phone at knife point is still quite high. But we sort of accept that risk, in Britain or the US or wherever we are. There's certain risks we accept in our life that, if I'm walking through a street in the dark and I've got my phone, somebody might try and take it off me. So for me, I don't see that going to Pakistan, where the media tells me it's full of terror and people trying to kill us. I don't believe that. I believe that most people I'm going to meet on my journey are people that value family, they value new friendships, and they value showing people their country, which is really important, because that's what happens. People do show you their country. People do want to explain to you why, they have this belief system, or why their religion does this and that. And I think that's really important. Now, again, for me, I don't think of a place like Pakistan as a place where you need to fear. What I think is we need to educate people and say, this place, the media tells us X, Y, and Z is happening here. What it's not telling us is A, B, and C is also happening. And we need to find that. We need to find that with our own eyes. Now, one of the advantages of going to countries like Pakistan is that flights tend to be cheaper than flying somewhere like Paris.
Yeah.
If you were flying to Hong Kong right now, I imagine the flight is relatively cheap.
Yes.
Right? Because people don't obviously want to go. So that's one of the advantages. Another advantage is that you tend to get away from tourism. Even though you are a tourist yourself, you get away from tourist-centred places, and you get to see a culture that's not been diluted by tourism. And that's a good thing. It also, I have a little saying that I don't think adventure should be sanitized. Now, for me, that sanitized word can, it means I don't think, you should sugarcoat it and wrap people in cotton wool, and people are adults and they should make their own decisions. Now, for some people coming to Nepal or even going to Europe, if you're from the US or wherever. So I think you just have to be aware of the issues that surround the places. And, in Afghanistan, I'm willing to pay somebody to tour me around Kabul so I don't get my legs blown off. And I'm being a little bit flippant here, but I think going into remote corners of the Himalayas and Hindu Kush doesn't just show you a world outside of what the media tells you. It shows the people of that country there is a world outside their understanding that doesn't hate, that doesn't want to come in there and occupy, that doesn't want to go in there as a peacekeeping force. It shows you you are a representation of your country.
That's very important. So when I go to some of these places, I've got a series of little tactics that I employ to keep myself as safe as possible. And one of them is if I go to a new third world city or a third world city I haven't been to for a while. So like last time I was in Delhi, for instance, I go and find myself a coffee shop or a bar on the first day of getting there. And I hide myself in the coffee shop or in the bar so I can watch what's going on in Delhi at that point in time, and almost observe for 3 or 4 hours. How are people behaving? What's the vibe? What are the cultural norms? so on and so forth, as opposed to just rushing into preventable problems. What strategies do you have that people could use if they go and start exploring in remote places by themselves?
One of the things I often do, and I think it's really important, is you say you go to coffee. Yeah, I'm still here, Rob, but I mean, that last time you were breaking up a bit, so I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you right perfectly now.
Hello?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, brilliant. No, it's just going in and going out. One of the tactics I use is if you say you go to a coffee shop or a bar, one of the things I do is I try and find the tea shop or the tea stall where the taxi drivers and rickshaw guys drink their tea. Okay. Now, like everywhere in the world, the guys that are doing the relatively low caste jobs, they're going to be the ones that are bitching and moaning about their country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that happens around the world. It happens around the world. So if you sit and drink tea, and if you can speak a bit of Urdu, a bit of Hindi, a bit of Nepali, a bit of Ladakhi, and you just get a taste of how they feel about their country, it's going to help you, isn't it? So I do tend to sit and have a cup of tea, maybe a little snack with the guys that, from the taxi rank or the rickshaws. Also, it tends to be cheap and good because the guys don't go to a place that serves bad food and bad tea.
That is very, very true.
So I tend to go there and hang out there, and I will nearly always go to a cheaper restaurant that serves local food than an international style restaurant with more expensive food.
I agree. When I came back from Nepal in '99, I'd been over there for just around about 4 months, and I hadn't been sick once. And yet I'd had friends who'd been out just to go, and they went and rafted the Sunkosi. And one of them had pretty much had Delhi belly for the entire of his 2.5, almost 3-week trip. And he's like, how do you manage it? And I'm like, I refuse to eat Western food. Wherever the raft guides eat, I'm going to go and eat. And it's admittedly, you have to get used to eating curry if that's not your favorite thing in the world. But it meant I had a full, healthy 4 months, as opposed to possibly 3 weeks of just puking the entire time.
Yeah, I pretty much understand that. If I was in Italy, I would eat pizza or pasta because I'd never ask them to cook me a curry. Similarly, why should somebody in India cook me a pizza or pasta when they don't necessarily know how to do it? Especially in local villages, you see quite a lot in Nepal. Local villages will offer pizza or pasta. They're never going to eat it themselves. So, the chances of that being cooked. So that's what I do straight away. Secondly, an important thing, are all quite tech savvy these days. So I have mobile phones or laptops or, that sort of device, tablets, and we all have, or a lot of us have nice gear. I tend not to flaunt my nice gear. I do tend to I'm always relatively scruffy anyway. One of the things is I try not to look like I've got stuff. If I'm walking through Srinagar, which is Jammu Kashmir in India, there's a lot of political people there. If I'm walking through the town there, I tend not to show the fact that I've got a lot of expensive gear. I will have a bag that's torn to bits and got duct tape holding it together. I won't necessarily have clean clothes or the latest expensive gear. And I think that's quite important. If you don't look like you've got stuff worth nicking, people probably won't nick it.
That is very, very true.
Similarly, don't be stupid. If you're in your hometown, if you're in your hometown anywhere in the world and you're in a coffee shop, would you leave your phone on the table and then go to the bathroom? Right? Nobody's stupid enough to leave an expensive mobile phone on unsupervised, as it were, on the table. And then people, when people travel, they might leave their day bag on the table and go to the bathroom and come back, and somebody might have, taken something out of the pockets.
I was going to say it's interesting as well. I've found I've had to appreciate in different parts of the world the ideas around ownership of possessions can change. So I found places in Africa that's where possessions are owned by the community as opposed to by individuals. And if somebody takes your kayak paddle from by your kayak, it's not that they're stealing it per se. It's just that their view of possessions is all of us own this as opposed to I own this. And when you come from somewhere like the UK or America that is very much, this is mine, I own it, to wrap your head around the fact that they're not nicking it.
Yeah, I mean, we have that in India quite a lot. We have. Bear with me a second.
Go for it.
Yeah, in India, we have that quite a lot. Where if you leave a paddle or a boat, down and by the river and for a few days, obviously not just randomly left on the beach, and you don't use it, somebody may use your boat because their understanding is, well, you're not using it. It's a shame for it not to be used. And and I sort of understand it in a way, but it is one of those things, we have to just deal with it.
If there was one big piece of advice that you could give to an outdoor enthusiast that would allow them to go and enjoy the outdoors to a higher degree, what would it be?
One piece of advice: you need less money than you think you do. Okay, that's like, you need less money than you think you do. If you're just going out and exploring, you don't need to be buying the latest, greatest titanium, ultra hyper light gear. You can go on amazing adventures with hobo stoves and homemade gear or stuff from thrift stores, and that's a great thing. Go on YouTube, you can find loads of stuff, but you can, if you're just going out, an hour from your house, you can have a great adventure in a lot of places. If you live in the middle of a city, I think you've got to go a bit further, but you can have like great adventures close to home. Doesn't cost a lot. Okay. Also, some people get scared about terminology. I can't join a conversation with these backpackers or these climbers or these mountain bikers because I don't know the terminology that they're using. Spend a bit of time, just listen, and people will pick you up in a nice way if your terminology is not brilliant, and that's a great thing.
Awesome, cool. And okay, so the last of these questions, what do you predict, or what do you, if you look in the crystal ball, what do you think the future of outdoor sport or whitewater kayaking will be, like the next big thing?
Oh, I'd really, really like to see barriers taken down when it comes to outdoor sports. Outdoor sports, as we just sort of touched on briefly in the last question, are not necessarily affordable for a lot of people. And I'm thinking about people of low income or people that have never been introduced to the outdoor world in their youth, because a lot of people get into it in their youth and we sort of stick to it into our adult lives. But I would really hope that people take on board affordability, that we don't need to spunk loads of money on expensive gear. And I really hope that people just explore more, and not just for the sake of themselves, which is a great thing to better yourself in adventure. It's a great thing, the places that mentally and physically adventure can take you is amazing. But people go and explore for the stories they're going to tell their community. So I went, for example, I went to Pakistan. It's not like it is in the media. It is a beautiful, amazing country. These are the views of the people I spoke to, and I think people need to be aware that travel is not insular. It's more of it's just a larger project. Even if you're solo traveling, it's much larger than that.
Awesome. Daz, I just want to say thank you for a second. And I want to say thank you about a whole number of things. But I want to say thank you for inspiring hundreds and thousands of people to get out there and go and have adventures, be it in the Himalayas or out of their backyard. And inspiring by your own actions to go and push your own level of adventures. But also say thank you enough for being humble. For the guy who's got a adventure CV like yours, you're still the guy who sat in an eddy on a piece of class 2 having a laugh and a joke with somebody who's just learning, who probably doesn't even know who you are or what you do. And that's rarely found in the world these days. I just want to say thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you very much, mate. It's been a pleasure to chat to you. I'm sorry if I've rattled on a little bit, but I would really welcome people chatting to me on forums. I do like social media, and I'll answer some more questions if people want to ask them quite happily.
Cool. Whereabouts can people best engage with you outside of this podcast?
Okay. So if people want to talk, they can look at purelandexpeditions.com, which is our business. But also, if people want to talk to me on Facebook, I am happy to answer any question on Facebook, and it's Darren Clarkson-King. If you do want to send me a friend request, I'm happy, but you need to send me a message because I get lots of friend requests, and if you don't send me a message, I'm not going to answer
it. Good job. Daz, thank you for your time today. I want us to catch up for a rematch of this to talk about solo adventuring at some point in time. But thanks for your day. Enjoy Nepal, and I look forward to catching you soon.
Brilliant. Cheers, Rob. See you, everyone.
This episode is brought to you by the We Get Outdoors tribe, where your next adventure is just one click away. You can join this, the fastest growing outdoor group on planet Earth, and become part of a tribe of like-minded outdoor enthusiasts, sharing your adventures, their adventures, trips and insights, and helping to ensure you plan and have the most perfect adventures. Click on the link in the description below to join for free right now.